Table 4, Sharma, and smile for God's sake. Henderson's voice, sharp as broken glass, always found her. Bleach-eaten hands, aching feet. That was Anna's life now. Until the old dame at table 7 left something behind. Not her dignity, though that seemed long gone. A ring, a rock that could buy Lily the experimental treatment or buy Anna's soul. See Mr. Henderson and the Beacon Hill Blue Bloods? They think she's just a waitress. They've no idea how her quiet kindness and the secret she now holds will change everything. That ring, it's not just money, it's a promise. One she might just keep, even if it breaks her. Table 4, Sharma, and smile for God's sake. Henderson's voice, sharp as broken glass, always found her. Bleach-eaten hands, aching feet. That was Anna's life now. Until the old dame at table 7 left something behind. Not her dignity, though that seemed long gone. A ring, a rock that could buy Lily the experimental treatment or buy Anna's soul. See Mr. Henderson and the Beacon Hill Blue Bloods? They think she's just a waitress. They've no idea how her quiet kindness and the secret she now holds will change everything. That ring, it's not just money, it's a promise. One she might just keep, even if it breaks her. The Boston rain, relentless as Anna's debt, hammered against the windows of the Gilded Spoon, blurring the gaslight glow into watery halos. Each raindrop felt like another nail hammered into the coffin of her dreams. Inside, the air hung thick with the perfume of old money, mingling with the yeasty aroma of freshly baked croissants. A world away from the sterile scent of the hospital where Lily lay. Anna navigated the crowded tables, her movements precise, economical. Years of waitressing had honed her into a silent, almost invisible presence amongst the Beacon Hill elite. Each marble tabletop, polished to a blinding sheen, reflected not Anna's own face, but the pampered visages of the cafe's clientele. Sharp-jawed lawyers, pearl-draped socialites, tweedy professors lost in thought. Their world of inherited wealth and effortless grace felt impossibly distant. A gilded cage Anna could only glimpse from the outside. Her real world was Lily's labored breathing, the rasp of medical bills piling on the kitchen table, the gnawing fear that shadowed every moment. Lily, her vibrant, sparky sister, trapped in a hospital bed, her laughter silenced by illness. Every shift at the Gilded Spoon was a battle, each tip a small victory against the monstrous debt threatening to swallow them whole. Art school, once a burning ambition, had become a distant flickering ember. Sharma! Henderson's bark sliced through the cafe's hum. Table 7 needs a refill. And try to look alive, will you? You're scaring the customers. Anna plastered on a smile, a practiced reflex that felt brittle and fake. She approached table 7, her gaze automatically sweeping over the impeccably dressed woman seated there. The woman was a regular, an oasis of quiet elegance amidst the cafe's frenetic energy. Her silver hair was sculpted into a perfect chignon, and her cashmere coat, the color of aged ivory, whispered of discreet luxury. But it was her eyes that always struck Anna. Deep pools of sadness, reflecting a lifetime of unspoken stories. More Earl Grey, madam? Anna asked, her voice soft. The woman nodded, her lips curving into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Thank you, dear. Anna refilled her cup, noticing the woman's hands, gloved in soft leather, resting on the table. A ring, a single, magnificent diamond, radiating a cold fire even in the muted light. It wasn't just the size, it was the cut, the clarity, the sheer, breathtaking perfection. A jewel ripped from the pages of a magazine, a symbol of unimaginable wealth. An hour later, as the lunch crowd thinned, the woman rose, her movements slow but graceful. She placed a crisp $20 bill on the table, a habitual overpayment, and turned to leave. Her eyes met Anna's for a fleeting moment, a flicker of something unreadable passing between them. Then she was gone, swallowed by the gray afternoon. The bell above the door chimed, a delicate punctuation mark on her silent departure. Anna moved to clear the table, her movements mechanical. Cold teacup, pristine saucer, the usual generous tip. But then she saw it. Nestled beside the saucer, gleaming against the dark marble, was the ring. It had slipped from the woman's finger, a glittering escapee from a world of privilege. Anna's heart lurched. Time seemed to slow, the cafe's hum fading into a distant drone. The diamond pulsed with light, a beacon calling to her. 1,000 possibilities flooded her mind, each one brighter, more tempting than the last. Lily's treatment, a life free from debt, a chance to finally breathe. Her gaze darted around the cafe. Henderson was buried in paperwork in his office, oblivious. The other customers were absorbed in their conversations, lost in their own worlds. No one had seen. Her hand trembled as she reached for the ring. It felt cool and heavy in her palm, a solid weight of possibility. A surge of adrenaline coursed through her, a dizzying mix of fear and exhilaration. She could slip it into her pocket, disappear into the city's anonymity, and no one would ever know. The image of Lily's frail face flashed before her, her small hand reaching for Anna's. Then she remembered her parents. No matter how poor, they had always been rich in honesty and love. She knew what she had to do. But how? She had no idea who this woman was, save for the fact that she liked Earl Grey tea and always tipped generously. 2 days passed in a blur of anxiety. The ring, hidden in her mother's old locket box, felt like a ticking time bomb, its presence radiating guilt and temptation. Sleep offered no escape, her dreams haunted by glittering diamonds and Lily's pale face. Salvation came in the form of Maria, a fellow waitress with a penchant for celebrity gossip. During their break, Maria was scrolling through a high society blog when she stopped, her eyes widening. "Check this out," she said, thrusting her phone at Anna. "The Boston Philanthropic Society Gala. Look at these blue bloods dripping in jewels." Anna scanned the photos, her gaze drawn to a familiar face. The woman from Table 7, resplendent in a midnight blue gown, her silver hair gleaming beneath a chandelier light. Even in the crowded photograph, her eyes held that same haunting sadness. Below the photo, a caption, "Eleanor Vance of the Vance Industrial Fortune, a longtime patron." Eleanor Vance. The name echoed with power and history. Vance Industrial, a Boston institution, a symbol of wealth and influence. A quick search on her phone revealed articles, financial reports, and an address. A sprawling estate in Brookline, a fortress of old money and towering privilege. The next day, her day off, Anna found herself standing before the imposing gates of the Vance estate, her heart pounding against her ribs. What was she doing here? She would appear as a common thief. Maybe they would call the cops. She took a deep breath and pressed the intercom button, her voice trembling as she spoke. I'm here to see Mrs. Eleanor Vance. It's about something she left at the Gilded Spoon." After an agonizing wait, the gates creaked open, revealing a long, winding driveway leading to a mansion that looked more like a museum than a home. She walked up the long drive and, after what felt like an eternity, a housekeeper showed her into an expansive library where, sitting in a wingback chair, was Eleanor Vance. "You are the girl from the cafe," she said, her voice calm and measured. "Yes, ma'am," Anna said, her hands trembling as she opened the small box. "I believe this is yours. You left it on the table on Tuesday." She held out the box. Eleanor Vance's composure for the first time cracked. Her eyes widened, and a sharp, audible gasp escaped her lips. Her hand flew to her chest as she stared at the ring, not with the relief of someone recovering a valuable possession, but with the raw emotion of someone finding a lost piece of their soul. "The Star of Vittoria," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She reached out with a trembling hand and took the box, her fingers brushing against Anna's. She stared at the ring for a long, silent moment, her eyes filling with tears. Finally, she looked up at Anna, her gaze intense. "Do you have any idea what this is worth, child?" "I looked it up," Anna admitted quietly. "Enough to change your life." "Indeed," Eleanor said, her eyes searching Anna's face. "And yet you brought it back. In this day and age, that is a remarkable thing. Why?" Anna thought of Lily. "Because it wasn't mine to keep. Because my sister, she looks up to me. I have to be someone worth looking up to." Eleanor nodded slowly, a flicker of profound respect in her eyes. She offered Anna a check, any amount she wanted as a reward. Anna asked for something small instead. just enough to cover Lily's medication for the week. It was an act of character that had intrigued Eleanor Vance far more than the return of the ring itself. It planted a seed of curiosity in the lonely billionaire's mind, a seed that was about to sprout in the most unexpected way possible. The diamond in her pocket was a physical burden. Throughout the rest of her shift, it felt like it was burning a hole through the cheap cotton of her apron, a secret so immense it seemed to radiate heat. Every time Mr. Henderson walked past, she flinched, certain he could see her guilt. Every customer she served seemed to look at her with knowing, accusatory eyes. The temptation she'd felt was now replaced by a nauseating wave of shame. She couldn't do it. Looking at her reflection in the darkened window after closing, seeing the tired lines around her eyes, she knew she couldn't build a better life for Lily on a foundation of theft. Her parents had raised her with little money, but with an abundance of integrity. That was their true inheritance to her, and she couldn't betray it. The problem was she had no idea who the woman was. The old lady from Table 7 wasn't exactly a searchable name. There was no credit card slip, only cash. For 2 days, Anna kept the ring hidden in a small velvet-lined box that once held her mother's locket, her anxiety growing with each passing hour. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. Maria, another waitress, was idly scrolling through a high society blog during their break. "Get a load of this," she said, showing Anna her phone. "The Boston Philanthropic Society Gala. Look at these dinosaurs in their jewels." Anna's eyes scanned the photos of smiling, wealthy patrons, and then she froze. There, in a candid shot near a floral arrangement, was the woman from the cafe. She wore a stunning midnight blue gown, but her expression was the same, poised, elegant, and deeply sad. The caption below the photo read, "Eleanor Vance of the Vance Industrial Fortune, a longtime patron." Eleanor Vance. The name echoed with power and history. Vance Industrial was a monolith, a Boston institution for over a century. A quick search on her phone brought up articles, financial reports, and a single imposing address in Brookline, an enclave of sprawling estates and old-world wealth. The next day, on her day off, Anna took 3 different buses to get there. As she walked the final half-mile, the modest suburban homes gave way to towering hedges, wrought-iron gates, and houses that looked more like museums than homes. The Vance estate was the most formidable of them all. A long, winding driveway snaked through acres of manicured lawn, leading to a formidable Georgian-style mansion of red brick and white marble. It looked less like a home and more like a fortress. Clutching the small box in her coat pocket, Anna felt a crippling wave of inadequacy. Her worn jeans and second-hand coat felt like a costume of poverty. What was she doing here? They would think she was a thief who got cold feet or worse, someone trying to extort a reward. She took a deep breath and walked up to the intimidatingly large front door, lifting the heavy brass knocker and letting it fall with a thud that echoed in the cavernous entryway. After a long moment, the door was opened by a stern-looking woman in a crisp housekeeper's uniform. "Yes," she asked, her eyes sweeping over Anna with unconcealed disapproval. I'm here to see Mrs. Eleanor Vance," Anna stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "It's a personal matter, a very important one. Mrs. Vance does not accept unannounced visitors," the housekeeper said, already beginning to close the door. "Please," Anna's voice was suddenly firm, laced with desperation. "I believe she lost something at the Gilded Spoon Cafe. I work there. Please just tell her that." The housekeeper hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Wait here." The door closed, leaving Anna on the cold marble steps, her heart pounding. A few minutes later, it opened again. "Mrs. Vance will see you." She was led through a grand foyer with a soaring ceiling, past oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors, and into a library that smelled of old leather and lemon polish. Bookshelves stretched from floor to ceiling, and a fire crackled in a massive stone fireplace. And there, sitting in a wing-back chair, was Eleanor Vance. Up close, without the dim lighting of the cafe, she looked more fragile, her skin like fine parchment, but her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and piercing. "You are the girl from the cafe," she said, her voice calm and measured. "Yes, ma'am," Anna said, her hands trembling as she opened the small box. "I believe this is yours. You left it on the table on Tuesday." She held out the box. Eleanor Vance's composure for the first time cracked. Her eyes widened, and a sharp, audible gasp escaped her lips. Her hand flew to her chest as she stared at the ring, not with the relief of someone recovering a valuable possession, but with the raw emotion of someone finding a lost piece of their soul. "The star of Atoria," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She reached out with a trembling hand and took the box, her fingers brushing against Anna's. She stared at the ring for a long, silent moment, her eyes filling with tears. Finally, she looked up at Anna, her gaze intense. "Do you have any idea what this is worth, child?" "I looked it up," Anna admitted quietly. "Enough to change your life." "Indeed," Eleanor said, her eyes searching Anna's face. "And yet you brought it back in this day and age. That is a remarkable thing." "Why?" Anna thought of Lily. "Because it wasn't mine to keep. Because my sister, she looks up to me. I have to be someone worth looking up to." Eleanor nodded slowly, a flicker of profound respect in her eyes. She stood up and walked over to a heavy mahogany desk, opening a drawer and taking out a checkbook. "I owe you a debt of gratitude that money cannot possibly repay, but I must try. Tell me what is a number that would, as you say, change your life." Here it was, the moment Anna had both dreaded and dreamed of. A blank check from a billionaire. She could ask for the full cost of Lily's treatment. She could solve every problem she had with a single number. But as she looked at the old woman, at the genuine, tearful gratitude in her eyes, something shifted inside her. Accepting a massive reward felt wrong. It felt like it would tarnish the act itself, turning her honesty into a transaction. "No thank you, Mrs. Vance," Anna said, her voice surprisingly steady. Eleanor stopped writing, looking up in disbelief. "I beg your pardon. I didn't return it for a reward," Anna said. "I returned it because it was the right thing to do." She hesitated, then took a chance. "But if you insist, my sister's medication for this week costs $375. We've been struggling to cover it. If you wanted to help with that, I would be very grateful." Eleanor Vance stared at Anna, her expression unreadable. She had been prepared for greed, for opportunism. She was utterly unprepared for this. A girl who returned a multi-million-dollar ring and asked for less than $400. Slowly, she tore up the check she had started writing. She reached into her purse and pulled out 4 crisp $100 bills. "Take this," she said, her voice softer now. "And I want your name. Your full name." "Anna Sharma." "Anna Sharma," Eleanor repeated as if tasting the name. "You are a very unusual young woman. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you." As Anna left the mansion and walked back down the long, winding driveway, the $400 in her pocket felt more valuable than the diamond ever could have. She felt light, unburdened. She didn't know it yet, but her refusal of a great fortune had intrigued Eleanor Vance far more than returning the ring itself. It was an act of character so rare that it had planted a seed of curiosity in the lonely billionaire's mind. A seed that was about to sprout in the most unexpected way possible. For a week, life returned to its grueling, monotonous rhythm. The $400 was a temporary solve, a single deep breath in a life of being perpetually underwater. It covered Lily's medication and a few overdue bills. But the mountain of debt remained impassive and immense. Anna was back at the Gilded Spoon, wiping tables and serving indifferent customers. The memory of the Vance mansion, feeling like a strange, vivid dream. She assumed she would never hear from the old woman again. Meanwhile, in the quiet solitude of her cavernous library, Eleanor Vance was not at peace. The return of the ring had not brought her the closure she'd expected. Instead, it had reopened a wound that had festered for nearly 60 years. The Star of Atoria was not just a family heirloom. It was the last thing she had of her sister Clara. Clara. The name was a ghost on her lips, her younger sister by 7 years. She had been the artist, the free spirit, the blazing comet to Eleanor's sensible, grounded star, and she had vanished from their lives at the age of 20, a lifetime ago. The official story was that she had run away to Europe with a penniless painter, cutting off all contact. But Eleanor knew the truth was darker, more painful. Their father, a cold and domineering patriarch, had driven her away after a terrible fight. and the family in its rigid pride had simply erased her. Eleanor, then a young woman herself, had been too scared to stand up to him, a failure of courage that had haunted every day of her life since. The ring had been Clariara's, a gift for her 18th birthday. Eleanor had been holding it, polishing it with a soft cloth under the bright light of her desk lamp when she saw it, something she had never noticed in 60 years of ownership. It was on the inside of the platinum band, so small it was almost invisible to the naked eye. A tiny, faint inscription, clearly etched by a master craftsman, but hidden in the ornate scrollwork. Her heart leaped. She retrieved a jeweler's loupe from her desk and held it to her eye. There in minuscule script were a series of characters, 42.3 at 84-degree holes and in 71.0589 degrees A. It was a set of geographical coordinates, latitude and longitude, and two initials, a D. Eleanor's hands began to shake. This was new. This was a message, a clue left by Clariara, hidden in plain sight for 6 decades. What did it mean? A frantic search on her computer revealed the coordinates pointed to a specific location right here in Boston Post Office Square, a small public park in the heart of the financial district. But who was AD? The painter Clariara had supposedly run away with was named Julian Croft. The initials didn't match. For days, Eleanor was consumed by the mystery. She felt a surge of purpose she hadn't experienced in decades, but she also felt utterly alone. Her husband was long dead. She had no children. And her circle of society friends was built on superficial pleasantries, not trust. Who could she confide in? Who could she ask for help? Her mind kept returning to the waitress. Anna Sharma, the girl with the honest eyes and the quiet dignity, the girl who returned millions and asked for hundreds. There was a strength in her, a clarity of character that Eleanor found herself inexplicably drawn to. And there was something else, a flicker of something she couldn't quite name. She made a decision. It was unconventional, perhaps even foolish, but it felt right. 2 days later, as Anna was wiping down the counter after the lunch rush, the bell on the door of the Gilded Spoon chimed. A sleek black town car had pulled up outside, and a chauffeur in a crisp uniform held the door open for Eleanor Vance. The cafe fell silent. Even Mr. Henderson, emerging from his office, was stunned into speechlessness. Eleanor Vance, looking as regal as ever in a tweed suit, walked directly to the counter where Anna stood frozen with a cleaning rag in her hand. "Miss Sharma," Eleanor said, her voice clear and caring in the quiet room, "I have a proposition for you, a business proposition. May we speak somewhere in private?" Bewildered, Anna could only nod. Mr. Henderson, suddenly obsequious, offered his office. Inside the cramped, cluttered room, Eleanor came straight to the point. "Anna, I need to hire you." "Hire me?" Anna blinked. "To do what? Be a waitress at your mansion." "No," Eleanor said, a faint smile touching her lips. "I need you to help me solve a mystery, a personal one. It requires discretion, intelligence, and above all, trustworthiness. Qualities you have proven you possess in abundance." She explained about the ring, its connection to her long-lost sister, Clariara, and the discovery of the inscription. She didn't reveal the family's painful history, only that her sister had disappeared, and this was the first clue she'd had in 60 years. "I am an old woman, Anna," she said, her voice softening. "I cannot go traipsing around the city on my own. I need a companion, an assistant, someone with sharp eyes and a clear head. I will pay you, of course, handsomely, far more than you make here. A salary of $5,000 a week for as long as this takes." Anna's mind reeled. The number was astronomical beyond comprehension. It was more than a salary. It was a rescue. It was Lily's future. It was the end of the soul-crushing exhaustion. But it was also terrifying. "Mrs. Vance, I don't know anything about being a private investigator. I'm just a waitress, an art student." "An art student?" Eleanor's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "Is that so? My sister Clariara, she was an artist, a brilliant one." She looked at Anna with a new intensity. "Perhaps that is a sign. Please, Anna, this is more important to me than all the money I possess. I need to know what happened to my sister before I die. Will you help me?" The plea in the old woman's voice was undeniable. It was a cry for help that resonated with Anna's own quiet desperation. This was a chance, a strange, unbelievable chance to escape her life, to help her sister, and maybe, just maybe, to be part of something important. "What do we do first?" Anna asked, her voice a mixture of terror and exhilarating resolve. A brilliant, genuine smile transformed Eleanor Vance's face, erasing years of sadness. "First," she said, her eyes gleaming with newfound purpose, "you will quit this dreadful job, and then we are going to Post Office Square." Quitting the Gilded Spoon was one of the most satisfying moments of Anna's life. The look of utter shock on Mr. Henderson's face as she handed him her apron was a memory she would cherish. An hour later, she was no longer Anna Sharma waitress. She was Anna Sharma associate to a billionaire on a quest. The transition was so abrupt, it felt like she had stepped into someone else's life. Their first stop was Post Office Square. It was a manicured green space, an oasis of trees and benches amidst the towering glass and steel of the financial district. For Eleanor, it was a place she hadn't visited in decades. As she stepped out of the town car, leaning lightly on Anna's arm, she looked around, her expression a mixture of nostalgia and apprehension. "What are we looking for?" Anna asked, scanning the park. "I don't know," Eleanor admitted. "A plaque, a statue, something related to the initials AD." They spent 2 hours searching. They examined every bench, every monument, every brick in the winding pathways. They found nothing. The park was dedicated to various war veterans and city benefactors, none of whom bore the initials AD. As the afternoon sun began to dip, casting long shadows, Eleanor sank onto a bench, a wave of disappointment washing over her. Perhaps it was a dead end, a meaningless doodle. Anna refused to believe it. "No," she said, thinking aloud. "Coordinates are too specific. The message is real. We're just not looking in the right place or the right time." She looked around at the modern skyscrapers. "This park has probably been renovated a dozen times in the last 60 years. What was here in, say, 1965? Eleanor's eyes widened. "Of course you're brilliant, child." The next day, they were at the Boston Public Library, delving into the city archives. The work was painstaking. They scrolled through endless microfilm, poring over old city maps and photographs from the 1960s. Anna, with her artist's eye for detail, was adept at spotting changes in the urban landscape. After hours of searching, we're just not looking in the right place or the right time. Just not looking in the right place or the right time. She looked around at the modern skyscrapers. "This park has probably been renovated a dozen times in the last 60 years. What was here in, say, 1965? Elena's eyes widened. "Of course you're brilliant, child." The next day, they were at the Boston Public Library, delving into the city archives. The work was painstaking. They scrolled through endless microfilm, poring over old city maps and photographs from the 1960s. Anna, with her artist's eye for detail, was adept at spotting changes in the urban landscape. After hours of searching, she found it, a map from 1964. Post Office Square was there, but on the corner where a gleaming bank building now stood was a different structure. A small, elegant, 3-story building with a sign, the Argent Gallery. "Argent," Anna breathed, her finger tracing the name. "Argentum is Latin for silver," Elena murmured. "But I don't recall a gallery by that name." "Let's look for another name," Anna suggested. "The owner, maybe." More digging. They shifted their search from maps to business registries of the era. And there it was. The Argent Gallery proprietor, Alistair Finch, not AD, Eleanor said, her shoulders slumping slightly. "Wait," Anna said, her heart quickening. "Look at the business partners listed. There are 2. She pointed to the second name printed in the same faded ink. "Proprietors Alistair Finch and Damien Croft. Damien Croft, DC, not AD. It was close, but not a match. It felt like another dead end. They were about to give up for the day when Anna noticed something in a society column from a 1965 newspaper mentioning a charity auction at the gallery. The Argent Gallery, co-owned by the dashing Alistair Art. Damien hosted a spectacular event. Alistair Damien. Elena read over her shoulder, her voice trembling slightly. A D. It wasn't his surname. It was his first and middle name, Alistair Damien. The name was the key. They now had a name to connect to Clara. Their research shifted, becoming more focused, more personal. They found art reviews from the era praising the Argent Gallery for championing new avant-garde artists. One review from 1966 specifically mentioned a remarkably talented newcomer, the enigmatic C. Vance. C. Vance? Anya whispered. Clara Vance. She was showing her work there, Elena said, a tear tracing a path down her wrinkled cheek. She was having a career, and we never knew. The discovery was bittersweet. It was proof that Clara hadn't just vanished. She had been building a life for herself, a life centered around her passion, a life her family had refused to acknowledge. Their investigation led them to old art world directories and eventually to a tragic discovery. Alistair Damien, a vibrant and celebrated figure in the Boston art scene, had died young. A car accident in 1968, just 2 years after Clara's triumphant review. The Argent Gallery had closed shortly thereafter. So the trail ends in 1968, Anna said softly, seeing the profound grief on Elena's face. Perhaps not, Elena said, her voice steely with resolve. Alistair Damien may be gone, but what about his family, his records, the gallery's inventory? Where did all of Clara's paintings go? The quest was no longer just about finding Clara. It was about reclaiming her legacy. For Elena, it was a form of penance, a way to honor the sister she had failed so long ago. For Anna, it was something more. She felt a strange, almost spiritual connection to this long-lost artist. She saw Clara's paintings in her mind's eye, imagined her struggling and succeeding in a world that even decades later was still so difficult for young artists. They hired a private investigator to track down any living relatives of Alistair Damien. The investigator, a no-nonsense man named Mr. Graves, was efficient. Within a week, he had located Alistair's only living relative, a nephew, a retired accountant named Robert Sterling, who lived in a quiet suburb just outside the city. Elena arranged a meeting. As they drove to the modest house, a sense of nervous anticipation filled the car. Robert Sterling could be the final link in the chain, the man who held the last remaining pieces of Clara Vance's story, or he could be another dead end, another door closed on a 60-year-old mystery. Robert Sterling was a mild-mannered man in his late 60s with kind eyes and a welcoming smile. He knew little about his uncle's glamorous life as a gallery owner, having been just a child when Alistair died. However, he was a meticulous keeper of family history. After my uncle passed, he explained, leading them to a dusty, meticulously organized attic. His partner, Damien Croft, handled the gallery's affairs. Most of the art was returned to the artist or sold, but Uncle Alistair had a personal collection things he kept at his home. When he died, it all came here. It's been in these trunks ever since. He pointed to a stack of large, leather-bound steamer trunks in the corner. Elena's breath hitched. With Robert's permission, they opened the first one. The scent of turpentine, linseed oil, and old canvas filled the air. Inside, carefully wrapped in yellowed linen, were dozens of paintings. As Anna gently unwrapped the first canvas, she gasped. The style was bold, vibrant, and full of raw emotion. It was a portrait of a young man with intense, brooding eyes. Alistair Damien, she presumed. The brushwork was confident, the use of color masterful. It was the work of a truly gifted artist. "This is her," Elena whispered, her hand trembling as she touched the corner of the canvas. The signature was small but clear CV. One by one, they unwrapped the paintings. There were stormy seascapes, intimate portraits, and abstract explosions of color. It was a lifetime of work, a soul laid bare on canvas. Clara Vance was not just a hobbyist. She was a master. "My father," Elena said, her voice choked with regret as she looked at a particularly haunting self-portrait of Clara. He called her art, a childish indulgence. He wanted her to marry well, to be a society wife. He couldn't see this. He wouldn't see it. In the bottom of the third trunk, beneath the last of the paintings, Anna found something else, a heavy leather-bound journal. The pages were filled with elegant, flowing script. It was Clara's diary. "May we?" Eleanor asked Robert, her voice barely audible. He nodded kindly. Sitting in the dusty attic with the late afternoon light filtering through a single round window, Elena and Anna began to read. Clara Ara's voice, silent for 60 years, rose from the pages. She wrote of her fierce passion for art, her frustration with her family's expectations, and her deep, all-consuming love for Alistair Damien. He wasn't just her gallery owner. He was the love of her life. He was the one who believed in her, who saw her genius when her own family was blind to it. The inscription on the ring suddenly made sense. The coordinates pointed to their gallery, their shared world. A were the initials of the man she loved. As Eleanor read her sister's words, the dam of her composure finally broke. The elegant, stoic billionaire wept not with quiet tears, but with deep, ragged sobs of guilt and loss. I knew, she confessed to Anna, her voice cracking. I knew she loved him. My father found out. He called Alistair a bohemian fortune hunter. He forbade Clara Ara from seeing him. There was a terrible argument. Father told her if she chose Alistair, she would be disowned, cut off dead to the family. I was there. I was 27, married, and a coward. She begged me to stand with her to speak to father, and I said nothing. I chose my father's approval over my sister's happiness. The next morning she was gone. The confession hung in the dusty air, a 60-year-old sin finally brought into the light. Anna didn't know what to say. She simply placed a comforting hand on the old woman's shoulder. In that moment, they were not employer and employee, not rich and poor. They were just two women connected by the ghost of a third. They continued to read. The diary entries after Clara Ara left home were filled with both hardship and joy. She and Alistair struggled financially, but they had each other and their shared passion for art. They poured everything they had into the Argent Gallery. The entry about her first glowing review was filled with triumphant, ecstatic joy. Then the tone shifted. Entries from late 1967 became more sporadic, tinged with anxiety. Clara Ara wrote of feeling unwell of a persistent fatigue. The final entry from January 1968 was short and difficult to read. The doctor confirmed it today. It seems my time is to be shorter than I'd hoped. My only regret is the art I will not create and the life I will not share with my beloved Alistair. I have asked him to do one thing for me. If anything happens, he must not contact my family. Their pride stole my past. I will not let it claim my memory. My legacy is in these canvases. That is enough. There were no more entries. Alistair Damien had died in a car crash just a few months later. And Clara Ara had been sick, a terminal illness. She hadn't just disappeared. She had died alone, estranged from the family who should have been by her side. The silence in the attic was profound, broken only by Elena's quiet weeping. The mystery was solved, but the truth was a tragedy far deeper than she had ever imagined. She had not lost her sister to another country, but to her own family's cruelty and her own cowardice. As Anna carefully repacked the diary, a small folded piece of paper slipped from between the back cover and the leather binding. It looked like a receipt or a certificate. She unfolded it. It wasn't a receipt. It was a birth certificate dated September 12, 1968. The mother's name was listed as Clara Ara Ann Vance. The father's name was listed as Alistair Frederick Damien. The child's name was listed as Rosalie Vance Damien. Clara Ara hadn't died of her illness in early 1968. She had lived long enough to give birth to a daughter no one knew existed. The discovery of the birth certificate changed everything. It transformed the tragedy from a story of lost love into a story of a hidden life, a baby. Clara had a child, Rosalie. Elena whispered, her eyes wide with shock and adorning impossible hope. I have a niece. She would be my god. In her late 50s now, the question was immense, terrifying. What happened to her? Clara died. Alistair died. Who raised the child? Mr. Graves. The private investigator was called back into service this time with a new urgent mission: find Rosalie Vance Damien. The search was no longer in the archives of the art world, but in the labyrinthian records of adoptions, orphanages, and social services from the late 1960s. While the investigator worked, Anna and Elena focused on Clara's legacy. Eleanor, with a grim and fiery determination, arranged to have all of Clara's paintings professionally restored and appraised. The art world was stunned. The discovery of a major unknown, mid-century artist was a significant event. Curators from major museums clamored to see the work. Clara Vance, erased by her family, was about to be immortalized by them. During this time, the bond between Anna and Elena deepened into something resembling family. They spent their days together, working, talking, sharing meals in the vast, lonely mansion. Elena learned about Anna's dreams, about her struggles to pay for art school, about the constant gnawing worry for her sister Lily. Anna, in turn, saw past the formidable billionaire to the lonely, regretful woman beneath. She found herself thinking more and more about her own family history. Her parents had died in a car crash when she was 17, leaving her to care for Lily. She knew her mother, Sarah, had been an orphan raised in the foster care system. Her mother had never known her own parents. It was a sadness. She carried with her a sense of being untethered from the past. One evening, while helping Elena sort through the paintings, Anna came across a small, unfinished canvas at the bottom of a trunk they had overlooked. It wasn't a grand landscape or an intense portrait. It was a simple, tender sketch of a mother holding a newborn baby, her face soft with love. Tucked behind the canvas was a small, faded black and white photograph. It was the same scene. A young woman with Clara Vance's unmistakable features, though frail and tired, was lying in what looked like a hospital bed, cradling a tiny infant. She was smiling, a smile of pure, unadulterated love. Anna's blood ran cold. She stared at the woman's face. It was Clara, but it was also hauntingly familiar. She pulled her wallet from her bag and took out the only picture she had of her own mother as a young woman. She held the two photos side by side, the faded photo of Clara, the worn photo of her mother, Sarah. The resemblance was not just striking, it was absolute. The same high cheekbones, the same shape of the eyes, the same gentle curve of the lips. They could have been twins. No, not twins. Anna's mind began to race, connecting dots she had never even known existed. Her mother, Sarah, an orphan. Her name, Sarah, a common name, but Rosalie. People's names are sometimes changed in adoption. Her mother's passion for art, a talent she had passed down to Anna, but which she had always dismissed as a silly hobby. The deep, inexplicable feeling of connection Anna had felt to Clara's story from the very beginning. "Eleanor," she said, her voice shaking so badly she could barely form the words. "You need to see this." Elena came over, looking at the two photographs in Anna's trembling hands. She saw it instantly. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "It can't be." Elena breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. "Sarah, your mother." At that exact moment, the telephone rang shrill and piercing in the quiet room. Elena, moving like a sleepwalker, answered it. It was Mr. Graves. "We found her." "Mrs. Vance," the investigator's voice crackled over the line. "It was a closed adoption, very difficult to track. The baby, Rosalie Vance Damien, was placed in the state foster system in late 1969 after her mother passed away. A few years later, she was adopted by a couple named Miller. They renamed her. They called her Sarah." Elena dropped the phone. It clattered against the marble floor, the investigator's voice continuing to speak into the empty air. She stared at Anna, her eyes filled with a century of shock, regret, and dawning miraculous understanding. The orphan. Her grandniece had been named Sarah. The waitress's mother had been an orphan named Sarah. The face in the photograph was the face of Anna's mother. There was only one possible conclusion. It was insane. It was impossible, but it was true. Clara Vance was Anna's grandmother. Rosalie, renamed Sarah, was Anna's mother, and Elena Vance, the billionaire, was Anna's great-aunt. The waitress who had returned the diamond ring was not a stranger. She was family. She was the last living descendant of the sister Elena had spent a lifetime mourning. The ring had not been returned by chance. It had, by some impossible twist of fate, found its way home. The revelation shattered the world of both women. They sat in the grand library, the photographs and the birth certificate laid out on the mahogany table like sacred texts, the air thick with the weight of 60 years of unsaid words and unknown truths. For Anna, it was a seismic shift in her own identity. She was not Anna Sharma, the descendant of anonymous immigrants, a girl untethered from history. She was Anna Vance Damien, the granddaughter of a brilliant artist and the grandniece of one of the most powerful women in Boston. The blood of the Vances and the artistic soul of Clara ran through her veins. It was overwhelming, a truth too vast to comprehend. She looked at her own hands, the hands she used to sketch and paint, and for the first time she understood where her passion came from. It was an inheritance. For Elena, the joy was so immense it was painful. It was intertwined with a profound soul-crushing grief for all the lost years. The decades she could have known her niece Sarah. The years she could have helped Anna and Lily, her own family, who were struggling just a few miles away, while she sat alone in her gilded cage, mourning a ghost. The guilt was a physical weight, but it was overshadowed by a fierce protective love for the young woman sitting across from her. All this time, Elena wept, reaching across the table to take Anya's hand. All this time, you were right here. There were no easy answers, no simple way to process the impossible. They talked for hours through the night and into the dawn. Anna told Elena everything about her parents, about their simple, loving life and their tragic death. She spoke of her mother's quiet sadness about never knowing her own story, a story Elena could have given her. The next day, their new reality began to take shape. The first thing Elena did was make a call to a hospital in Switzerland, one renowned for its cutting-edge treatments. "My great niece is ill," she had said, her voice imbued with a power and authority Anna had never heard before. "She will have the best care in the world. Money is no object." When they visited Lily together, the dynamic was transformed. Anna introduced Elena not as her employer, but as their great-aunt Elena. Lily, weak but sharp, looked from the formidable old woman to her sister, her eyes wide with questions as they gently explained the impossible story. Lily's tired face broke into the first genuine, hopeful smile Anna had seen in months. In Elena, Lily didn't see a billionaire. She saw a grandmother, a link to a past she never knew she had. The legal matters were handled swiftly and discreetly by Elena's team of lawyers. Anna Sharma was officially recognized as Elena's sole heir. The Vance fortune and the legacy of Vance Industrial would one day be hers. The news was dizzying, the numbers on the documents meaningless and abstract. But Anna knew what she wanted. The money was a tool, not a destination. A week after the revelation, she sat with Elena in the library, a portfolio of sketches in her lap. "I don't want to run a corporation," Anna said firmly. "That was your world, Grand-Aunt Elena. It was your father's world. It wasn't my grandmother's, and it isn't mine." She opened the portfolio. Clara's work deserves to be seen, but not just hers. There are so many other artists out there, just like she was, just like I am, who have the talent, but not the opportunity, who are working in cafes and driving taxis to support their passion. Her vision was clear. She wanted to use a portion of the Vance fortune to establish a foundation in her grandmother's name. The Clara Vance Foundation, dedicated to providing grant studio space and gallery representation to emerging underprivileged artists. And she wanted to transform a wing of the Vance mansion, or perhaps even buy the old Argent Gallery building, if it was possible, into a permanent free museum dedicated to Clara's work. Elena looked at her grandniece, her heart swelling with a pride so fierce it brought tears to her eyes. She saw Clara's fire in Anna, her passion, her integrity, but she also saw strength and business acumen that was pure Vance. She was the perfect synthesis of both worlds. "It's a brilliant plan," Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your grandmother would be so proud." Their lives became a whirlwind of purpose. Lily was transferred to the clinic in Switzerland, where her condition began to improve almost immediately. Elena, reinvigorated, threw herself into helping Anna establish the foundation, her society connections and business prowess proving invaluable. One crisp autumn afternoon, months later, Anna stood before a crowd of journalists, artists, and patrons. They were gathered in a beautifully restored historic building in Post Office Square, the former Argent Gallery, which Elena had managed to acquire. Today was its grand reopening as the Clara Vance Museum. Anna, dressed in a simple, elegant dress, looked out at the crowd. Her great-aunt Elena stood in the front row, beaming. In her hand, Anna held a small velvet box. A few months ago, I was a waitress. She began, her voice clear and steady. My life was changed by an act of honesty, but more than that, by an object of immense value, not because of its monetary worth, but because of the story it held within it. She opened the box. Inside, gleaming under the gallery lights, was the star of Vittoria. This ring belonged to my grandmother, Clara R. Vance. It was a key that unlocked a hidden past and brought a family back together. Anya said, her eyes finding Alelena's. Today, it symbolizes a new promise. The promise of this foundation to unlock the potential of artists whose stories deserve to be told. She slipped the ring onto her finger. It no longer felt like a temptation or a burden. It felt like a connection, a legacy, a perfect unending circle of family art and fate, beginning and ending in the very same place. All thanks to a moment of kindness in a cafe on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. In the end, the story of Anna and Alelena wasn't about a lost diamond or a discovered fortune. It was about how the echoes of the past never truly fade. It's a story of two families fractured by pride and reunited by a simple act of integrity. Anna Sharma didn't just get a new life. She reclaimed a lost one for herself, for her sister, and for the grandmother she never knew. Her story reminds us that our true inheritance isn't money or status, but the legacy we build and the connections we forge. It proves that sometimes the most valuable things in life aren't the ones we keep for ourselves, but the ones we give back. If this story of fate and family touched your heart and made you believe in the power of doing the right thing, please take a moment to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who loves a story of incredible twists and heartfelt reunions. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true life stories that will inspire and amaze you. Thank you for watching.